You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS fluff or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today is episode 231, Building a Company Culture of High Performers Who Never Want to Leave, with Yuri Elkaim. If you're a business owner who wants to improve your time management and elevate your productivity so you can maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I am really looking forward to bringing this conversation to you today. You are going to get to meet our guest, Yuri Elkaim. Yuri is a New York Times bestselling author, former professional athlete, business strategist, and founder and CEO of Healthpreneur. His journey into health and business was inevitable. After dealing with a host of health issues as a teenager, he eventually lost all of his hair at 17 years old. Yuri turned his battle with chronic illness into a successful online health empire that helped more than 500,000 to better health, while providing him the platform to write 3 best-selling books and sharing his message on major media outlets like Dr. Oz and The Doctors. In 2018, he sold his health business after 13 years at the helm. Yuri is now CEO of Healthpreneur. He and his world-class team of coaches help health professionals and coaches leverage the internet to turn their expertise into high 6- and 7-figure virtual practices that create transformative results for more people without the grind. In our conversation, Yuri and I dive into how he built a high-performing team of stars and seeds who support his vision and goals, how he maintains a culture they love to work in, and how you can do the same. In today's episode, you will discover why designing your company culture is so important, the most impactful skill sets to look for in potential hires, how self-awareness shows up in your business, the hard lessons Yuri learned during his journey, how he put his high quick start energy in check, ways to utilize visual clarifiers for communication, and so much more. And now let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Welcome to Productivity Straight Talk. Yuri, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Amber. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Absolutely good. We were able to chat before we hit record. We were chatting about you're in the snow, I'm in the dry cold. But we get to chat today about a topic that I'm pretty passionate about. And
guacamole?
I'm sorry?
Was it guacamole or something else?
Oh, yeah, exactly. So guacamole is a winner for me always. Yeah. That's funny. Like, did you get that out of my bio or I just posted yesterday about guacamole on my social media?
No, I mean, I've obviously done my research and I know you like guacamole. I love guacamole too. So sorry to cut you off in the intro there.
No, that's hilarious. No, I love that. So my son loves guacamole too. So we're like a lover of guacamole in the house.
I think it's awesome. A prerequisite for being on the show. I think that would probably be one of the criteria, right?
Okay. And to be fast friends, I'm sure.
Exactly. Anyways, I'll let you continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no, awesome. So you are a business owner, and today I want to learn a bit about your business, your primary business, but we're going to be talking about how to build an amazing team that supports your goals and your visions, and what goes into building and supporting that team to be able to support you. We're going to do your official bio, but why don't you share in your own words with our audience a little bit about your business and your background?
Yeah. So I run a company called Healthpreneur. We started it 5 years ago, and we help health professionals really across the whole spectrum from, I would say, predominantly alternative health professionals. So we don't deal specifically with like GPs and MDs, although we have a number of them, but chiropractors, naturopaths, health coaches, dietitians, that whole spectrum. And we help them get clients and build their businesses online. Specifically, we've been waving that flag well before lockdowns and the pandemic hit. And I've always just felt that was the future because my life fundamentally transformed when I came online in 2005, 2006, because I was a trainer, I was a nutritionist, I was burnt out doing the one-on-one and built a business in that space to the consumer online for 13, 14 years, sold it a few years ago, and made a lot of mistakes that gave me a lot of clarity with our current business, Healthpreneur. But again, our goal is to help health professionals build better businesses so they can help more people without like killing themselves in the process, because burnout is the single biggest issue that our industry is afflicted by. And it's something that is, I think, just more a symptom of the model than anything else. So we're looking to free them and help them help more people, including themselves. And our mission is to impact 1 billion people through leveraging what these business owners can do with their respective communities.
All right. And so as you're on your mission to help 1 billion people, we had chatted before offline, so I'm going to bring the audience up to speed, is that one of the things you said that resonated that I always say is, I don't think we were meant to build these dreams by ourselves, and go after these big goals all by ourselves. Because to your point, that is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for burnout. It's a recipe for frustration and ultimately hating our business.
Yeah.
When no one got into business to say I wanted something that I didn't like or that burnt me out. So why is building the team, why do you think building the team around you is so important? And what are some of the benefits in focusing to become the leader that can build that team?
Yeah, I think, not everyone wants to build a team, and I think that's fine. You just have to recognize the trade-off is you're not going to build anything substantial, right? Like you can build a nice lifestyle business with a VA and that's fine, right? I'm not here to judge. But I think, for some people watching or listening to this, like you get to a point where you recognize you want to do bigger things. And like, I think most people can build, I would say, about $500,000 business with a VA or, one other person. As soon as you get beyond that, you run into too many operational bottlenecks where you can't do everything yourself. And even at $500,000, you're running into like burnout stage. And again, it depends on the business model. So I think, there's two things. I think number one is the impact of the business. Like you can impact, significantly more people and obviously make more money, et cetera. But there's also the other piece, which I'm very passionate about, which is helping create fulfilling work for people that are on your team, right? And I think in today's day and age, the statistics are really not encouraging. Most employees, I think it's like 70% of employees are disengaged at work. And it means that they're doing work that they don't enjoy. And that sucks, right? Because there's so much opportunity nowadays. But I think, there's so many opportunities to work remotely now, or, maybe obviously in some cases in an office, but I think it's about finding that culture that really makes the most sense. So I think as leaders, ultimately leadership is about inspiring and leveraging results through others. And it's, first and foremost, we have to lead ourselves. But at some point you're like, okay, well, cool, I'm leading myself. Now what, right?
Yeah.
So I think we want to really feel impactful and fulfilled in our lives. It ends up being an extension through other people. And that's why I think it's such a fulfilling and rewarding practice to do that. But it's also challenging, right? I don't know if you have kids, Amber, but I've got 4 boys, and like it's hard work, right? And I tell people, like, building anything great isn't easy. If you're taking the easy path and if you're looking for the easy route, you're probably not going to build anything legacy worth, if you will. Because people will always be your biggest problem. They will always be the biggest problem. And that starts with us as individuals. But it also means like, all right, well, I got to deal with this person and that person. And that's what I've heard a lot of times where people don't want to build a team, is they don't want to deal with that. And I'm like, that's fine. But it also means you just don't have the skill set yet to be able to handle that and get past that. So I think there's these limiting mindsets that we have that hold us back from building something great. But we also have to grow into the leaders that are able to build great teams as well.
Absolutely. Well, you really nailed it there. At the end, I was, thinking as I'm listening to you, we start these businesses because we are passionate about something, we're uniquely skilled at something, we stumble into business and then realize like we have a great opportunity to do something big. And then one day we wake up and we're like, we have to lead people. Like that's part of being a business owner. Like you don't initially think that's what it is. You think you get really good at your craft. You get really good at the thing that you serve the world with, and that should be the recipe for success. And as we lift our heads up and say, yeah, it is about leading people and leveraging through other people. Is this a skill set I'm willing to learn so that I can achieve bigger results?
Absolutely.
And so what type of skill sets do you think are most impactful as we are attracting team members and leading team members?
I think the most important, I think there's there's probably many, and we can obviously touch on a few, but I think the two big ones for me as a leader are high levels of self-awareness and a very high capability for clear communication. Because a leader has to be able to extract and articulate their vision, because that's ultimately what people are going to be building. So if you don't know what you want, then how are people supposed to build that with you? So clarity of vision is massively important, but that also boils down to clarity of if you want someone to do something, or if you're building out a new project, the clearer you are as the leader about what that outcome could look like, the less back and forth and micromanaging is going to be involved in that whole project. And so I think clarity of communication is massively important. And the second thing is, as I mentioned, is high levels of self-awareness. The ability to, and this is like, I had a bit of an issue with one of my kids this morning, and I went for a walk. I had to clear my head. And I came back and I told my wife, I'm like, listen to this course that I'd purchased like a year and a half ago that I totally forgot about. And I said, we have to be on the same page with this, because I said, it is 100% our fault and it's our responsibility. Because as I'm listening to this, I'm like, it has nothing to do with my son. It has everything to do with me, right? How I'm showing up, the way I am. And I think as a leader, whether it's, parenting or leading ourselves or our team, we have to understand what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses. And we have to be able to evolve and adapt to our environments, as opposed to expecting everyone to simply like, hey, it's Yuri's way or the highway. Like there's a certain dance that has to happen, because if you're not able to even understand that, listen, you might be saying things that rub people the wrong way, or hey, maybe you talk way too much and people are tuning out. Basic levels of like emotional intelligence like that, I think are massively important.
I agree. I think about how I show up always myself, but I would say each team member gets a different flavor, whether I'm more direct or I'm communicating more clearly on an area that I know is a weakness for them because they need more explanation. Whereas if I talk to someone else, they need a little bit less explanation. I agree with you that it does take the ability to read the room, but understand people so that they can show up their best.
Totally. Yeah. It's, and that's one of the most, satisfying things about leading others is like, you just get to learn about, like, I remember when I hired my first assistant. So this is like my first hire, 12, 13 years ago. I did a personality assessment called the Colby test. Mm-hmm. And I realized, I'm a high quick start, low fact finder, which is very similar with a lot of entrepreneurs. And when I had my assistant do the test, she was the complete opposite. And I was like, oh, people are different than I am?
Okay. I remember having that same thought when I learned personality tests.
Yeah, I was like, oh, so you can't get this done by tomorrow, and that's okay because you don't think the same way I do. You don't operate the same way I do. So that was a really, really big eye-opener for me to understand that everyone is not the same as me. And it's actually a good thing, because if everyone was the same as me, like nothing would get done or, whatever. So I think it's about appreciating. The more I've like developed our team and really spent in this kind of leadership realm, the more I study behavioral sciences, the more I'm fascinated by what drives this person. How is this person going to show up? How does this person respond when, crap hits the fan? What are some tendencies about this individual that, I can observe and help coach and et cetera? Because it's fascinating, because really, like, if you can help people become the best versions of themselves, everything else results-wise will follow. Mm-hmm. And that's something that really I'm very passionate about, because I've always been driven by really my core why on this planet is how to help people become the best versions of themselves, right? It started off in health and wellness and weight loss and all that kind of stuff. And then it's obviously, helping business or health professionals build their businesses and in the process building themselves. But it's also with our team members, is helping them become the best versions of themselves so they can continue to ascend in their career path. And if I can be a catalyst in that process, then that's great.
Is your team all virtual, or do you have a hybrid?
We're all virtual. So right now we're a team of close to 30, and most of us are, so I'm just outside Toronto. We have a few people in this neck of the woods. Most of the rest are in the States. We have a few in the Philippines, a few in Australia, and one in Europe at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of us are familiar with, company corporate culture. It's, how do we gather? How do we celebrate people? It's much more organic when you're face to face. So I want to dive into how do you create culture, support the culture in a 100% virtual company? So many, and just to give you an insight, like so many of our listeners have either 100% virtual or hybrid. And the question that I often get is like, how do I do that? Like Slack, like that's it. Like, how do I create that culture?
I'll give you what's worked for me, and what I'm sharing now might evolve. It most likely will, right? As we continue to grow and expand. So every company, and the fascinating thing too about learning and reading books and learning from other companies and founders is every company they don't all have the same approach, right? Which is very interesting. So it's like all of these different approaches can work. I'll just share what's worked for us so far. So for us, like, I think the most important thing for us is like, I lead by example. So when people, I think as the founder or, your company, every business has an energy, an aura, a feeling to it. And people can kind of sense that even if they don't really, go beyond their website or consume some of their content. And I think that's the first most important thing is like how you show up as you, the founder of the business, and obviously from a place of integrity, because it's like a boomerang, right? Who you are is what you're going to bring in. Mm-hmm. And one of the core values of our team is we're committed to excellence and committed to growth. And every single person on our team is so committed to growth that it's the one thing they all talk about. Like if you went to our website and saw the videos of our team, they all say like, I love working here because it's, the growth, how much I've grown, But that's because I'm obsessed with growth. Right. So the company ultimately becomes a reflection of the founder in some way, shape, or form. The core values stem from usually what the founder or founders deem to be important or how they show up in life. And so the company is an extension of who you are initially. Right. So I think that's the first most important thing is if you are not genuine and integral to who you are, you're not going to attract the right people, because at some level you're going to attract, if you're putting out a facade, you're going to attract the wrong people who are attracted to that facade, right? It's almost like, dating someone with, a false picture on your profile. Not that I do that, but whatever. Yeah.
Well, this goes back to the self-awareness. You've taken the time to be self-aware to say, okay, what are my core values? Like what matters to me? Growth. Okay, well, just taking that time to say, like, it matters for me to know what my values are, then taking the time to express and be consistent with that messaging has now evolved into your culture. Yeah. When I was looking up a bit about you before interviewing, I saw really quickly right off the top, core values, like on your website. Like you lead with it to the outside world. And it sounds like I'm not surprised that you lead with it in behind the scenes with your team as well.
Yeah. I think for us, we have a very strong bond as a team. And it feels like everyone's hung out in person when most of us haven't even met each other in person. And part of that is the rhythm that we have or the communication cadence that we have. So in our company, I'm not a huge fan of meetings, but they're also important for alignment, et cetera. We do all of our meetings on Mondays. So we call it Meeting Mondays. And we do that on Mondays so that the rest of the week is just focus time. The last thing that I want to spend my time on or have my time or my team doing is like pop-up meetings all over the place, right? It's just like, let's get it done on Mondays. We know what we're working on. We're clear and we get to work. So number one, we have a weekly sync, which is where our whole team comes on. And the purpose of that meeting really is nothing other than just sharing wins of our clients, sharing appreciation within the team. We review our vision, our core values. We'll bring the team up to speed with anything we're working on from a quarterly project perspective, or like we just had our annual planning meeting last week. So we're sharing some of that with the entire team. And it's really just like an alignment meeting so that everyone is on the same page and rowing in the same direction. The focus of that meeting really is, and we're always looking at ways to improve it. So making it very collaborative. So people are speaking more than I am, for instance. Mm-hmm. because, like, I don't want to just speak for half an hour or 45 minutes. Like, I want our team involved. So we'll do breakout rooms and get people, connecting and knowing each other a little bit better, it's always fun. So that's kind of like the pillar of our team. And then beyond that, we have departmental meetings, again, once a week. We call them pod meetings. And then we'll have a one-on-one with direct reports that happen usually bi-weekly, weekly if necessary. And those are really kind of like the three pillars of our communication cadence. And then beyond that, everything happens inside Slack. So for the most part, we have a same day policy, which is if someone posts a message in Slack or a question, you don't have to we strongly discourage having notifications on, because the last thing you want is to be in deep work and you're like, oh, just got a notification. Just let me go respond to that person.
That's right. I love that you're an example of this, because people hear me recommend that and they're like, but no, how do we, no, it's okay. Once upon a time, there was a time you could shut your door and do deep work.
It's like, if it's an emergency, you can send a text. Like if someone gets a text, which never happens, that it's an emergency, cool. But anything else can wait a few hours if needed. So we want to, whether our team is, whether we're talking about our coaches or, marketing side or sales, for the most part, the world's not going to come to an end if you have to wait an hour or two. And we just set those expectations, but it's do not let people wait several days. Same day is good enough, and usually within a few hours. So that's typically how we've, in terms of our meeting communication and cadence and our rhythm is pretty much what we've done on an ongoing basis to make sure everyone at a high level as well as departmentally is on the same page. And then from an onboarding perspective, when people are hired, we take them through some very high level, cultural type stuff. Here's our core values, here's our vision, which they know anyways already before the hiring. We walk them through some of our guiding principles, our communication, how we communicate, how we set our objectives on a quarterly basis, how we do all that type of planning, so that when they see the various tools we're using, they're not lost like a deer in the headlights. So when people do come to work with us, it very much feels like a fire hose, but we let them know it's going to feel like a fire hose, because there's going to be a lot of learning, a lot of growth, but we're here to, really walk you through this as quickly as possible. We want them fully up to speed within about 14 to 28 days at the latest. And it just requires a little bit of, taking it all in. But we all start with the high level stuff, right? Mm-hmm. The role and departmental stuff comes, but first and foremost, they need to know what we're all about. What's our brand promise? What are the things that we do and do not tolerate? What do we stand for? What do we stand against? All that stuff is super important.
It sounds like you have great standards and you communicate those standards, and everyone
can
on the
always
team.
Be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask that what we're hearing today sounds great, but it wasn't always that way. So how did you pivot over and over throughout the years of being okay, I need to be more in leadership. This is more about okay, onboarding didn't necessarily work. How'd you get that feedback loop to keep making those adjustments throughout the years? Because I keep hearing you say, and it's going to be different later. So I know you're always evolving. How did you get to where you're at now?
So my previous company, it was very complex. We had, I would say, at least 100 different products. So ebooks, courses, supplements, and funnels to associate with each one of those. And the problem that I didn't realize I was the problem until later on in that business, and my brother was the director of operations, I would just be like, hey man, let's do this next week. And he's eventually it's dude, you're freaking out the team every time you bring stuff like this to the table. And I was like, wow, let's just get it done. That's how I ran the business for so long.
Quick start.
And, just a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my first, maybe I need to do this a little bit differently. But I don't think it was until I started Healthpreneur in 2015-ish that I really started thinking a bit more about this. And even then, I still had that tendency. And a few years in, I started to look at, okay, we have a good base, revenue is good. The sales and marketing piece is pretty much dialed in, but we need to improve operational efficiency here. We have to figure out a better way to communicate, because I do not want to burn my people out. I feel like I'm spinning my wheels. It's all over the place. That's kind of the feeling, right? So I really took a step back and I started to look at the business from a higher level perspective and started to look at, all right, well, how do these big companies operate, right? I'm sure they're not just on a whim to get an email from the CEO saying, hey, here's a new product line. there's got to be a rhyme or reason. So I really started studying a lot more of these operational systems, whether it's EOS or other things. And I implemented elements of, all of them, and to kind of figure out my own rhythm and our own process that would work. And that's kind of how it all came together, to look at, all right, if people are going to freak out if I just throw stuff at them because I like pressure, not everyone else does. All right, well, what does a proper strategic thinking / planning methodology look like? And let's start to roll this out slowly but surely. And then any new people who come on board start to adopt that. And that's just the way we do things. And so that's pretty much how it came about. It was just, I didn't want to causing pain and suffering, quote unquote, for the people I was working with, because I think for a lot of us high quick starts, we like deadlines. We like, oh, I'm under the gun. I have to get this done by tomorrow. Great. Not everyone thrives in those situations. And so that's really where it stemmed from, is I did not want to continue running a business that was just a week by week. What are we going to do? What's the next promotion? Like, I didn't want to run that. I wanted to have a very clear vision of where we're going, obviously in the future, but what are we focused on this year?
Yeah.
And then what are we going to do in the next 90 days to move closer to that? And that started, how it started to evolve. And that's kind of where it came from.
So this interview sounds more like an entrepreneurial case study, which is a type of interview that I do, because what I love, I just want to pause for all the listeners to hear this, is that you're a self-identified quick start. That's what you tested. So many people that are listening are like, me too. And they don't see that it's possible to become the planner. They don't see themselves possibly, slowing down to speed up or to create less stress and chaos for themselves and their team. And I love that you just shared that experience. It sounds like you woke up one day and was like, this isn't working for me. I'm willing to make a change.
Yeah. And I just want to share something on that, because there is a lot of benefit. And this is actually so I was talking with our leadership team about this too. And I said, as a team, we have a core profile of being fast action takers. And that's great. But the downside is this other thing, which is, I guess, cutting corners in communication, et cetera, stuff like that can happen. And, many entrepreneurs have heard the saying, ready, fire, aim, right? Just kind of like go. And that's how I lived my entrepreneurial life for, a decade plus. And then I started to think about, well, when I did that, what ended up happening was I had to go back to that stuff that I fired and fix it afterwards. And then when that happens dozens of times, you're like, dude, maybe you should aim for a second, right?
Yeah. So
I really had to move out of my just go into, all right, idea, cool. Clarify the idea. Am I clear on what the vision looks like? Am I clear on what this, ends up looking like? All right, cool. Just sit with that for a second. Who are the people involved? What are the resources required? Is this feasible? Is it viable? Et cetera. And really starting to ask better questions before just going, because it's so easy to do more and it's hard to do less, but doing less really well is just something I've grown and matured into. And now I love taking my ideation and using that to build systems and machines. That's where I get a lot of my kind of creative juice out. It's not so much about creating new product lines. We have 2 core programs in our business. That's it. And I kind of use that high quick start energy to look at, how do I continually improve the product? How do I make it easier? How do I reduce, if it's a 20-minute video, how do we bring it down to 10 so our clients can move through things more quickly? And so that's where I am able to disperse more of my creative energy on the product side, but also really stepping back to look at what are the smart strategic moves that I'm not just going to throw tomorrow, but really thinking through, because I know the consequences of not doing so properly.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you shared your way of still being able to express that quick start. It's still it is who you are, but it's part of your everyday, and there is an outlet for that. One of the things that I have heard over and over is the frustration with quick starts that, why can't it just be done? Because you see it's 2 steps, but the person that is the perfect complement to you saw the 27 steps that it takes, right? The details, the executor. How have you navigated being more open to, okay, this is the special skill set I bring to the business, and I equally respect the opposite, which is it takes the person to say, hey, that's 27 steps, not 2.
Yeah. So I think for me, it started off with just the amount of back and forth that was happening. I'm like, why don't you get this? Like, oh my God, like really? I have to I fill you in on that detail as well. So it was like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I could easily say, well, I have the wrong person I'm working with. I could say that. But I also have a belief that great systems can really solve many people problems, right? Because when I say a system, I mean, it could be a communication system. So something I learned from one of my coaches, Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach, was this tool called the impact filter. And we've revised it, over the years to something we call the vision clarifier. And my team knows that, and I continue to remind them, do not let me bring something to you without a vision clarifier. So for us, a vision clarifier is, and this could be, it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It could be like, I want this thing done. And we have a decision-making process where the first question is, can this be done in under 5 minutes? And if the answer is yes, it just gets done. But if it requires more than that, and it requires more than one person involved, then it has to go through a vision clarifier. And the vision clarifier starts off with, what's the problem or the pressure that I'm trying to solve or the thing I'm trying to create? Why is that important? So I have a one pager and I'm typing in or mapping this out. So I'm selling myself on what has to get done here. And then I'm looking at, all right, well, who is going to run this? Who's the champion of this project or this thing? Okay, cool. Do I have the right person? Are they the most capable? I think so. Cool. What's the worst case scenario if this doesn't get done? What's the best case scenario if this does get done? And then what are the outcomes, the specific outcomes we're looking for? Ideally tangible outcomes. What's the time required? What are the resources required? And then mapping out about 4 to 6 milestones. Just, I think this, and then this and this. And that's all happening on one page. So that takes me about 10 minutes to sit with and think about. I'll take that and then I'll just give that to whoever is going to be working on this project. So it could be, a project manager, it could be our director of ops, could be, whoever it is. They will read it. And then I'll ask them to just send me a quick Loom video about what they've understood to be true about that process. And then once that's all good, if it's a slightly more complicated thing, then we'll jump on a clarity call. And that clarity call will be about 15 minutes. And then we just spend a little bit more time talking about what are some of the risks, what are some of the things we're not thinking about, who's involved, who's going to get stuff done by when. We map all that out. And then it moves into what we call our flight plan, which is our sprints or our weekly commitments, depending on if it's a smaller project. And again, it seems like, a very bureaucratic process, but it's something that, we're continually instilling into our team because number one, it opens up the communication and transparency to everyone. So everyone knows what's happening and there's no black ops, there's no hidden projects. And then the person who is going to be championing this thing pretty much has all the clarity and details they need. And what that means for you as the visionary is you can completely remove yourself now. So now there's no more like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? It's like, no, you have all the decision-making capability. Send me the almost finished products and that's it. So it saves you or saves myself. I'm like, like Geico, like 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Yes.
I should actually come up with a tagline for this. Like 10 minutes could save you 10 hours or more.
Yes.
That's exactly what this is it's clarity. And I tell my clients this, I'm like, the more clear you are, the faster you will go. And so this process is you get clear and you take a whopping 10 minutes to really think about, all right, why is this important? What are the outcomes, et cetera? And then you hand that off and it's 80% done. And then you can really step out and then everything else moves so much faster. And that's just so much better than random Slack messages or random Asana stuff and just back and forth all over the place. And that's more or less how we do stuff now compared to, the ping pong matches that used to happen way back in the day.
Right. I have never heard this strategy before, and that doesn't happen often. So I'm blown away. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
And I'm just imagining using this, which is structure, but I believe structure creates a lot more freedom, right? Yeah. So like you said, 10 minutes gets you 10 hours, a lot less stress, a lot less frustration, probably a heck of a lot closer to what you actually envisioned in your head because you took the time to clearly communicate. Have you ever gone to do this vision clarity worksheet and said, wow, I actually can't tie this to our quarterly plans, and then dump it. Like, it seems like it's a great filter to stay on track with your monthly and your quarterly and your yearly plans as well, because so often we as business owners love to throw in new things that just take us on this whole other journey, and it actually takes us away from achieving our ultimate vision for that year.
Yeah, which is why it's so important to do it, because you have to sell yourself first and foremost before you can sell anyone else on the team on it. So if you're going through this process and you're like, you know what, it's probably not that important, right? Is this really going to move the needle, or is it just like, am I trying to itch my my dopamine, thingamajig, right? So it's a very, very good practice for that. And even in our quarterly planning, there's been many, many times where we have set objectives for the quarter, and we'll for 2 weeks in, and we're like, you know what, this thing, we're just going to scratch it. We started getting into it, and we're like, you know what, this is a waste of time. This is not that important to us. And so we give the team freedom to, if we write stuff down, it's not like we're not writing stuff on a block of cement. It's not fixed in stone. If you engage in a project, stuff happens so quickly now. There's new technologies that can change. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, but if you're forecasting a project for the next 90 days, and you're doing the best you can with the knowledge and information you have, but if you learn something tomorrow that you didn't know before, all of a sudden that project could become unnecessary or obsolete. So within our planning methodology, so if we have an annual planning meeting, we'll have a quarterly planning meeting every 3 months. Those quarterly planning meetings are, we know, it's like, okay, guys, here with what we currently know, here is what we deem to be the most important projects to work on based on our, available bandwidth, et cetera. And we'll work on those. And then sometimes, we're like, you know what, a month in, we're like, that thing, it's not that important, or we'll finish something. We have more bandwidth now. We can add something else in. Because the other thing is that when you're in a high growth company, or at least a always learning and ideation type of process, you have to give flexibility for those new ideas to come in, because otherwise you become a dinosaur. You become so rigid to say, nope, sorry, we can't do anything for the next 90 days, even though that thing could change the game in the next, 30 days. So it's this balance of, I'm 100% in agreement with you around the structure creates freedom, because otherwise it's just, just new ideas every day. Mm-hmm. But giving yourself a little bit of wiggle room to, again, assess with discernment, to be like, here's something I just learned. But instead of saying, let's do it, really taking it through a thinking process and letting it simmer for a second, and looking at, okay, is this going to further weigh down people who are already working on stuff? Because if they're going to work on this, I got to take something else off their plates, as opposed to, and do this,
right,
and do that. So I think for me, that's been a big learning over the past couple of years, is recognizing it's not and this, and this, and this. It's and this, but this other thing, well, we're only putting this thing in because we finished this thing, or we realize it's not really going to move the needle that much. So I don't know if that makes sense. But.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of feedback loops. You guys are always evaluating and pivoting when need be. Yeah. One of the things that you said that I just want to highlight is that you make a decision on the quarter and give yourself the freedom to make a different decision.
Yeah.
So often business owners don't want to commit to a plan for the quarter or for the month or even for the week, because if it doesn't go as planned, they failed. But how I like to refilter that is you make a decision, and then you get to make a different decision whenever there's new information or the environment changed, or maybe you just see it differently 2 weeks from now. All of that is okay because it's a new input. But waffling on, so we're just going to see what happens. And it's very indecisive and not a great strategy to move forward.
And ultimately, whatever you decide should support the bigger goals, right? So, you have somewhat of a clear vision of the future, 3, 5, 10 years, as much as possible. And for us, we have what we call our Focus 4, which are our 1-year goals. And they're typically based around revenue, profit. The first focus goal is actually our critical number, which is the percent of our clients who achieve certain status levels, which is we kind of base that on revenue that they've generated with our help. That's the most important critical number for us. So that's number one. Number two is revenue and profit. And then we have one or two more based on like a bigger project or whatever. So when we look at, let's just look at the critical number. Cool. So every decision or every project under that critical number is, how is this helping our clients win faster or bigger? That's it, right? So if we have a new idea that comes in, cool. Does it fit into that category? Cool. Is it going to support that? Is it going to help move that metric and that goal? If yes, okay, cool. Let's consider it. But if it's a complete departure from the main goals and the North Star, then it's like, well, now we're just all over the place. So definitely be adaptable, but also, you have to be able to, again, that balance between structure and freedom.
Excellent. One thing I wanted to talk about before we close out is that you coach your team members. And that's not often a common terminology used as a leader to say, I coach my team members. Can you elaborate on that and give me some examples of how you see yourself coaching your team members?
Yep. And to be honest, I had a revelation last week. I mean, that's something I can still do a better job of, which I'm going to commit to this year. But so our business is fundamentally a coaching company. So we coach our clients. And I realized initially I spent all my time coaching clients, and then we hired other people to support us with the coaching. And then I moved into coaching my team. I was like, that's pretty cool. And that seems to be the path of you coach clients, then eventually you coach your team to coach your clients to bigger results. So my whole goal is, how can I build the team and help in the growing of the team, have them build the business? Instead of, I love driving, but I also, in the context of business, don't want to be the driver. I would rather be the passenger and allow them to drive. Two reasons. Number one, I enjoy a little bit more freedom. And number two, I empower other people to just do amazing things. So part of that is when we're looking to, there's really two types of people you can bring into a company. I call them stars and seeds. Stars are people who either have been where you want to go, and they're the ones going to teach you a few things, which would be great, but you obviously have to pay a premium for them, which is fine depending on where your business is at. You can also have stars who are, maybe not quite where you want to go, but they're high performers. They're going to come in and they're going to have the output of two or three normal people. And those people, you just kind of here's where we want to go, and they go and make it happen, and you just get out of their way. It's amazing. And then there are seeds. Seeds, in plain English, would be junior level people who you are willing to take on and really look at, okay, here's what I'm not expecting, day one amazing performance, but in a year from now, this person could be a rock star.
Right.
And in either scenario, you have to commit to growing them. If you brought a star in, you still, whether it's you teaching them or at least giving them access to training, it's I don't have all the answers, but I easily have purchased courses, masterminds, coaching programs for team members based on what they wanted to work on. And that's something that's very important to us because, number one, I don't want to be the go-to or think I'm the go-to for everything. So if I can provide, some operational help by purchasing that for our ops person or some copywriting trainings for our copywriters, I'm all for that. And we've done that repeatedly. On top of that, I do spend a good amount of time on a daily basis in different areas that I would say I'm the best at, which is sales and marketing. So if we're bringing on new sales reps or a new division we're looking to build out in sales, although we do have a director of sales, I'm happy to spend the time in there initially to build up and coach our team. And again, I know that right now we're building out an outbound sales team, and that's something I'm very, very passionate about helping develop. So I'm in there every single day with them, coaching them, helping them get better, and really show them the distinctions and nuances that will help them perform at the highest level, knowing full well that in the building of that system and machine, someone else will come in eventually and run that. On top of that, one of the things that we kind of got away from that I want to kind of bring back in is doing monthly masterminds as a team. So we kind of again, departmentally, so marketing, sales, coaching, et cetera. Each one person a month would come in and share something and teach the others. And it was really awesome. Oh man, that's so cool. They read an article somewhere, or they watched a training, or they went through something, and now they're bringing that knowledge and teaching others. And that's something that I thought was really, really valuable. And it's something we're going to continue doing, or we're kind of bring back in a more, I think, more impactful way. But I think there's so much great collective knowledge within your teams, whether it's 2 people, 100 people, just leveraging that amazing knowledge and just continuing to allow other people to contribute to the learning and growth of themselves and their colleagues, but also you as the leader. Like for me, like we hired a director of marketing a little while ago, and I spent close to 40 hours over the space of 1 month with this individual. And then things didn't work out too well. We let him go. And I had zero remorse. I was like, all right, one person could say, well, you just wasted 40 hours. I'm like, well, what's the alternative? I hire him and then what? Like if I don't spend the time with them, like, am I going to hope for miracles? I would rather, and I would do it 100 times again. I would rather invest the time. And this is in addition to the onboarding and training we already have in place, which is very step-by-step. But in key roles, I want to step in and make sure that like I'm empowering this individual. If I spend 30 days with someone, one-on-one if I have to, for 30 minutes a day, it is the best investment I can make because I can empower and leverage or really equip that person to go 10 times faster. And that buys me time and leverage. So for me, anytime I'm spending time with my team, there's never a question of, is this worth my time? It is 1,000,000% worth my time every single time.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I think happened because you invested, so you were confident in your onboarding, confident in the hiring process, confident in the onboarding. You spend 40 hours over 1 month. You were able to make a quicker decision as a leader that person wasn't working out. Yeah. Oftentimes, because we're stingy with investing, because we're like, that's a little risky. What if they don't work out? We're not actually confident enough to say they're not going to work out because we feel guilty. We're like, did I do enough? Did I set them up right? Did we have the right systems? Did I train them enough? And then now that problem becomes a 6-month problem, sometimes even longer. So the power that you were, or not power, but the ability to be able to quickly move through that decision sounds to me because you were confident in the way that you showed up and the company showed up too.
I think so. And also, going back to our culture, there was some very important feedback that I got from some of our key team members that I didn't see, that I took in. And I let our team know about this after this happened. I said, you guys, like, it's very important that you guys feel safe sharing stuff with me because here's why. And if I hadn't listened, and I'm not just talking about like someone who worked with us for a week is like, giving me feedback. I'm talking about like key people on our team, 3-4 years, people I respect, and they're telling me certain things that maybe I'm not seeing. If I don't take that into consideration, what does that tell everyone else about why are we even sharing stuff in the first place?
Yeah.
Right? So it was every single time we have let someone go, I've been very transparent and open with the team about why it happened. And I share it with them. And I also remind them, I'm like, guys, like, I'm not sharing this with you to scare you that, you might be let go. I'm letting you know why this happened so that number one, you're not thinking about why it happened. But also number two, I just want to be open and transparent with you. I call it the HOT principle, honest, open, transparent. It's kind of like, I guess, all the same thing. But I figure I'd rather be open about that stuff as opposed to just letting someone go. And then everyone's just like, what happened to so-and-so? And not knowing.
Well, talk about how you, like, the stories, how that affects the culture, that there's actually more fear around that and uncertainty than just being straight up with them.
Yeah. And again, it's just about like, I'm not saying you're going to get let go. It's just, here's why. Like 6 months of not doing this thing, we should let them go sooner or whatever the situation was, right?
Right. Yeah. All right. So the theme that I heard from you today is it is incredibly beneficial to invest in others. It's always, you're always on the upside, that lets you have more freedom and grow your business, and that your culture started with what your core values are. And that just shows up in every way that you're supporting your team. Communication, attracting people, communicating with them is through all of your core values and clarity around that.
Yeah. And one more thing on the people side, sometimes people say, well, what if I invest all this time and energy and maybe money into this individual and they don't work out? Well, the alternative to that is, well, what if you don't? Right. Mm-hmm. But also, no one's going to stay with you forever. Right. Like everyone, we're all going through seasons of our lives. And if someone's with you for 6 months, a year, 10 years, if you can help that person become a fundamentally better person more skilled, more fulfilled, more whatever in their interim with you, that's amazing, right? Like why would you not want to do that, right? So for me, I'm like, if someone's worked with us for a year and they move on, I'm like, great. Have I made your life personally and professionally better? Is this person going to speak well of me and our company years down the road? I would hope so, as opposed to we ended on bad terms. And like, I don't think there's really been, there's like, to my knowledge, there's not been a single and we have very, very low turnover, but there's not been an instance where we've let someone go and it's just turned into a dramatic nightmare. It's always been very respectful, in some cases mutual, and in some cases very, very difficult. And I've always said, just let me like approach the situation like it is. And, we, to the best of our ability, end on good terms. And if we cross paths in the future, we could, high five, give a hug, have a drink, and there's no hard feelings, because the people you meet up on the way down or on the way up are the same people you're going to meet on the way down. Right.
Yes. So. I mean, when you think about leadership and how to measure your success, I think you just summed that up. Like it's not a numeric number. It's what is that experience with the people that are in your lives or have been in your lives for seasons. That was a great place to end off. I think that if the listeners here today get excited about learning the skill set of leadership because of the impact they can make, I think that makes them better business owners, better humans in the world to be able to make the impact, because it really is person to person.
Yeah. 100%.
Yuri, thank you so much for being here today. If my listeners would love to find out more about you and follow you, where do they do that?
Just search for anything healthpreneur related. So if you want to follow my content on YouTube, I've got hundreds of videos there about marketing, sales, leadership, mindset. Search Healthpreneur on YouTube. I'm there. On Instagram, I'm at Healthpreneur. And I've got a great book on Amazon called Mind Floss if you're interested in doing the inner work, because your business growth is a reflection of your inner growth. So you can find that on Amazon as well. But yeah, just hit me up on Instagram. I'm there on the DMs on a daily basis. But yeah, that's the best place.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and your experience and your growth as a leader and leading your company.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks so much, Amber.
I have loved having you listen to this episode of Productivity Straight Talk. And I sure hope you found my conversation with Yuri to be incredibly insightful and inspiring. Inspiring you to take action to be the leader you know you want to be the leader that your business needs you to be. It's so exciting to think about that growth journey. It's exciting to look at this as an opportunity to grow and step into the person that your business needs you to be, or the leader that your business needs you to be. I think that's an exciting opportunity. And when I think back to what I knew, or rather didn't know about leadership 10 years ago, and what I know, understand, and live today, man, that is so exciting. And you may have heard me say this before, but that makes me just as excited to get to meet the person I get to be in 5 years from now. So my question to you is, are you taking action to step into the leader your business needs? Are you choosing to learn the skill set of leading your team, inspiring your team, clearly communicating and empowering them, delegating with clarity? If you're not, and you want support with that, I would love to support you inside my Leverage Lab program. Inside Leverage Lab, among many other areas of your business, I teach you how to leverage people. How to leverage people is about building your dream team. It's about stepping into the leader that your business needs, learning the actual skill set of attracting the right team members, supporting the right team members. And if you think that your business could use some support in that area, then I invite you to check out my Leverage Lab program. You can do that by heading on over to amberdelagarza.com/leverage lab. No change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So this is the point in the episode where I ask you, based on what you heard Yuri and I speak about today, What is one small action you can take that will move you forward towards your goals? What is one small action step you can take so that you can implement the knowledge you've just gained from listening to today's episode? So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.